Let's dive into a truly unsettling paradox today. How can the one thing that's supposed to save your life at sea, the lifeboat, also be one of the single biggest risks a sailor can face? It's a piece of gear designed for survival, but for decades, it's often done the exact opposite. So what on earth is going on?
Okay, so first things first. Is this shocking claim that lifeboats have killed more people than they've saved actually true? You hear it thrown around a lot in the maritime world, but the answer, well, it's not a simple yes or no. It's frustratingly complicated.
And this slide really gets to the heart of the paradox. Look at this. A major UK study found that over 10 years, lifeboat drills killed 12 sailors and injured 87 others. And in that same period, how many lives did they save in actual emergencies? 0. But then you get one single massive success story, like the Sun Vista evacuation, and poof, over 1,000 people are saved. The problem isn't that lifeboats never work. The problem is that they're terrifyingly dangerous pretty much all the other times.
To really understand how we got into this mess, we have to go back to one specific disaster that completely changed the rules of maritime safety and, in the process, accidentally created the very crisis we're talking about today.
This quote right here explains the original problem perfectly. See, before the 1980s, the hooks holding the lifeboat couldn't open as long as they were carrying the boat's weight. You had to wait until the boat was in the water. But imagine being in rough seas, getting slammed against the side of a rig. It was almost impossible. As this report states, boats were just trapped, crashing against the platform because the crew just couldn't get the hooks to let go.
So here's the chain of events. You have the old problem, hooks that won't release when you need them to. Then, bam, the catalyst. A horrific disaster in 1980 kills 123 people, and that design flaw becomes impossible to ignore. This leads to the solution, a brand new type of hook, an on-load release hook that can be opened at any time, even with the boat's full weight on it. Problem solved, right?
Wrong. So wrong. In a tragic twist of irony, the cure became the disease. That one key feature that was designed for safety, the ability to release the hook under load, became the new source of danger. These new hooks started releasing accidentally, dropping boats and their crews from catastrophic heights.
And this is where the story just gets absolutely absurd. An analysis of accident reports found that over 98% of these deadly lifeboat incidents, they don't happen in real emergencies. They happen during drills, maintenance, and inspections. You know, the very activities that are meant to ensure safety. So why does this keep happening? Well, as you can see here, investigators point to the same things over and over again. The equipment designs are just way too complicated, crews don't get proper training on their specific systems, the instructions are unclear, and maintenance gets neglected. It's not just one thing, it's a complete and total breakdown of the system.
And that leads us to a really key concept. These aren't just a series of unlucky mistakes. We're looking at a systemic, vicious cycle of failure, where pretty much every attempt to fix the problem has arguably made it even worse.
And this diagram illustrates the real issue beautifully. It's so easy to just blame human error, but that completely misses the point. You see, human factors experts show us that accidents are almost never just one person's mistake. They are a failure of the entire system. The technology is poorly designed, the organization doesn't provide the right training or enough time, people are basically set up to fail from the start. And so what has the industry's response been over the years? Well, instead of going back to the drawing board and fundamentally rethinking the whole design, we've basically just bolted on more complexity, more procedures, and more things that can go wrong. And this process creates the perfect trap. First, the on-load hooks start dropping boats by accident. So the industry's fix? They mandate these things called fall prevention devices, which are basically just safety pins to lock the hooks. But now imagine a panicked crew in a real emergency. They now have to remember an extra complicated step, remove the pins before you can launch. We've just added another layer of complexity, another potential point of failure, and made the whole system even more dangerous. But what if there's a different way? What if instead of adding more complexity to a flawed design, we just rethought the entire concept of how a lifeboat gets into the water? This brings us to the free-fall lifeboat, and wow, the difference is like night and day. The conventional system on the left, the kind lowered by cranes, is slow. It depends on those complicated hooks, and it stays dangerously close to the ship. The free-fall system on the right, it's brutally simple.
It's basically an escape pod that slides down a ramp using its own momentum to plunge into the water and get clear of the sinking vessel. No complex release hooks needed during the launch.
And the physics here, they just don't lie. This slide shows data comparing the two systems. The chart on the left shows how fast they launch. The freefall boat hits the water much faster. The chart on the right shows how far it gets away from the ship. The conclusion is simple. It gets away faster and it gets further away. In an emergency, those seconds and those feet save lives.
And remember those training accidents? Well, get this. Over 15,000 people have been launched in freefall lifeboats during training exercises without a single reported injury. That one number says it all. The design is just inherently safer because it's simpler, and it removes the most dangerous parts from the equation.
So, after decades of this, what's the ultimate lesson here? It's about more than just lifeboats. It's about how we think about safety and how we design systems for real, fallible human beings who are under incredible pressure.
And we just can't forget the human cost of getting this so wrong. Since the Alexander L. Keelan disaster, it's estimated that around 420 seafarers have died in lifeboat accidents. These are deaths that happen not in some catastrophic shipwreck, but during the routine practice of safety.
Ultimately, we are left with what the industry itself calls an imbroglio, a tangled, seemingly unsolvable knot. We have this massive global fleet that is equipped with a complex, flawed system. A system where the very act of practicing for an emergency has become the emergency itself.
Which leaves us with a final, vital question that goes far beyond ships and the sea. When we are faced with a clear danger and we design a solution for it, how do we stress test that solution against human nature, complexity, and unintended consequences to make absolutely sure the cure we create doesn't become worse than the original disease?